Welcome everyone. If I haven't met you, I'm Vic Francis. Pleasure to pastor here at Shore Vineyard. And it's lovely to have you here. It's always a little bit exciting, isn't it, when we get towards that Christmas time. And, so busy and so rushed in lots of ways, but such an important time for us to kind of zero in and focus on things around faith. So we'll be talking about Advent over these next few weeks and having a jolly good time in the process. Before I start today, I just want to ask Elisha and Grace, and maybe Emmy, and Toby will come because she kind of has to come because she's with Mum. Elisha and Grace have been doing a bit of a God process, and some stuff's happening in their lives, and they're going to tell us about it. So you have moved across the bridge. I can't understand why, but tell us that you've moved, and why have you moved?
Yeah, so we have moved now. We did it last weekend to Onehunga. So it's kind of been maybe a year/5 months in the works. And so we have moved over there because we have some friends who have decided to live really intentionally in their neighborhood. They've all moved onto the same street in the same suburb, and they've just decided they want to be good neighbors to the people around them. So they are doing things like hosting community events, trying to advocate for better playgrounds for the kids in the area. They gather twice a week for prayer, and they're just trying to be good news in their neighborhood. And so we decided we wanted to go and join them when they offered us an invitation to do that. So it's been a long time, and it's been really bittersweet kind of processing it, but God's kind of worked miracles along the way to kind of show us it's the right thing. We decided we would move, and we didn't have a place to stay down there on the street we're looking for, and Grace emailed a property person down there, and they said, come view a place that's exactly what you're looking for. It just came available. It's on the street you're looking for, 2.5 years old, warm, dry, ground floor apartment. Come have a look on Wednesday. On Wednesday at 3 o'clock, Grace went there and saw the place. 3:30 she applied. 3:45 we were shortlisted. And Thursday, the next morning at 10 o'clock, we got accepted. So that's happened. I went to my work and I said, I just started applying for jobs, and for 3 weeks I hadn't heard anything. And on that third week, I went into our head office, and the head of HR, the second in command in the company, comes up to me and says, "Hey, Elisha, the CEO's been meaning to chat with you for 3 weeks, but he can't. Could I have a coffee with you?" And I said, "Yes." And he says, "We want to talk about your future at the company." I had to say, "Oh, well, I'm leaving, actually." And they said, "Don't leave." They looked at where I was moving, and they said, "We have a venue that needs a new manager, 5 minutes drive from where you're going to live. Go and be the new manager there." So that's happened, and so every step of the way, God's just been providing. So a testimony to God's goodness for us.
There you go. So tell us about sort of the community a bit more. It's an intentional and would you call it evangelistic, or it's living, being part of the community? Yeah.
So it's a missional, intentional community, and basically we're very fortunate at this stage where everyone who is a part of it at the moment has all gone to Bible college. So we're all equipped theologically and missionally, and over half of us have practiced as pastors at one point or another in the past 5 years. So we've just kind of taken what we've learned in churches and just applying it to the street, basically. So very missional focused. We are heavily involved in a local community centre that is across the road from where we're actually living. And there's a playground there and a community centre. And so we run a board games club every Monday for the primary school age kids after school. The Halloween that just happened, they ran an event with 250 kids that came past just to give them a safe alternative to go to. And it was what the community didn't realise, it was run by a group of Christians. And it was being protested by another group of Christians. But they didn't realise there was other Christians running this event, and it was just to have a safe space for these kids who were going to go trick-or-treating, to give them something safe. There was face painting. On Wednesday we have what's called a 312 Day coming up, so it's the old bus that used to run through Onehunga, and basically it's just a celebration of the area, and as a community we're involved by face painting, balloon animals, running the bouncy castle, organising it, so whatever we can do, we just are hands and feet basically in our community. and we just are incredibly intentional with spending time in prayer with one another. So like Elisha said, Thursdays and Mondays we do prayer in the morning before work, and then we gather whenever we can to have meals, and it is just fully open invitation to anyone who wants to come and just join in the food, join in the prayer. So it is incredibly inclusive, and it's living together and spreading the good news of Jesus.
So the name of the street is?
So the street that we're on is called Waitangi Road, and it's in a micro suburb of Onehunga called Oranga.
And it's lower socioeconomic?
Yeah, so lower socioeconomic, and is very evident of the homelessness in the area. So there's a lot of ex-state houses that have been boarded up, and there were people living in those, and they're just kind of being pushed out of their houses. So there's people squatting in these houses now. So our local MP was recently just down the road looking at one of the houses, and there was a family squatting in this house with no power, no water. So it is, very low socioeconomic.
Yeah, interesting. So Grace and Elisha obviously have been significant in our church. They've preached quite a lot. They've run a young adults home group. We're not losing them completely, but we're sending them out, and we're going to keep in touch with them. So how might that work? You'll come here some Sundays maybe?
Yeah, so because of moving, it's kind of impractical for us to keep coming this way. And also they do run a home church with a small group of families that we want to just try attending with the girls. But we also know that we do love gathered community in its bigness that we have here at Shore Vineyard. And so we didn't want to lose that. So we had said that we'll definitely be coming back sporadically, which, preaching if we're allowed, because we still love preaching.
There's a new pastor in town, I hear.
Yeah, we'll have to ask him.
I don't know about that guy.
But we'll still be around and we'll still be present, but just less frequently.
Well, we want to bless you. We want to thank you, so we don't feel like we're saying goodbye, and yet things, obviously it is a changing scenario. We're going to pray for Grace and Elisha at the end of church today, so we'll bring them back. Hopefully the kids are in good shape still as they're nearing lunchtime. So, but thank you, sort of in the wider scope, and we'll get to pray for you specifically, and bless you as you go and as you explore this wonderful thing that God's doing. So let's give them a hand. They are a great family. Obviously, we've got a group of preschoolers who have sort of emerged in church over the last little while, which has been just a wonderful thing. We had a meeting last Sunday, and we're looking in the new year to be restarting our Sparklers program. So some of you have been around for a while, remember Sparklers as our preschool group. We sort of, we ebbed, the tide flowed out, and the tide started to flow in a bit. But if there's anyone here who would like to be involved in that as we start it, kind of maybe help run a little program or stuff like that, that'd be really helpful, because we don't have enough parents just to be able to say, well, the parents are going to do it. But we want to sort of develop that so families, as they come in, have a great opportunity to be part of church. And so if anybody here would like to be part of that, that would be great. And hello. How you going? I'm not your dad. Gee, shucks. Hey, well, welcome to Advent, everybody. And we're going into series. I love going into series. First day of the series, always a wonderful day in my world. And so welcome to our Awakening Wonder, we're calling it, series. And we're going to take that right through to Christmas Eve. You're going to hear that word awakening attached to various words along the way. And the idea of calling this and being part of an Awakening Wonder series during Advent and Christmas came from that line from O Holy Night. As I was thinking about it over, about a month ago, and it was this line really: a thrill of hope, the weary world rejoices. And I'm thinking, as people come to the end of the year, and I talk to a lot of people, obviously, and, kind of not only in church, but in my family and around, that I think as we come to the end of a year, and maybe particularly as we come to the end of this year, a lot of people sound and feel weary as we come to the end of the year. A lot of weariness, and this is what I'm hoping for these next 5 services, so 4 Sundays and then Christmas Eve, that we will be a non-judgmental, and I don't think we're particularly judgmental of each other, but internally non-judgmental place, and yet an inspirational place where we can allow a thrill of wonder to reawaken, or just reawaken hope, peace, joy, and love in our hearts. That's my hope. And that's my invitation for us, week by week, to come here. And maybe if you're online because you're not able to be here on a Christmas, because of the busyness of Christmas and stuff, to be part of the process of following through the Advent themes of hope, peace, joy, and love. I should mention that every week in chapel, we are having a chapel service, which is following also through the Advent process in a slightly different way. And so if any week you can't be here, you're welcome to be there. It's the first one today, 8:45 each week. It's a beautiful time to be. And then on Christmas Eve, we'll go, so we're doing Hope, Peace, Joy, and Love. On Christmas Eve, it'll be Awakening Wonder. I'm going to speak at Christmas Eve in amongst all of the carols and stuff like that we're going to do about the Magi and the wonder of seeing the star and following the star and worshipping and giving gifts and going home, importantly going home another way. That's going to be the Christmas Eve message. So please try and come. I know it's such a busy time, but I think things could happen if we could be part of this particular series. So welcome to Awakening Wonder, and particularly a welcome today to Awakening Hope. We may be aware within ourselves of a weariness. And if we're not aware of it in ourselves, we're probably aware of it in the lives of someone else that we love. Anxiety, we sort of have, kind of maybe an epidemic of it. People feeling stretched and tired and, maybe worried about jobs, or maybe having to work too many hours, heaviness, weariness. And so wherever we are, I think this is our opportunity to reconnect or to awaken or to remember these things that we're going to be talking about, the candles that we're going to be lighting, the ideas that we're going to be sharing. And so what I want to do as I sort of begin my message is just to give you a candle. If you can grab a candle and then just pass it on back. And these are for these two blocks. And maybe in this block if you can do the same. And just hold on to the candle. It might be a little bit important as we come to the end. That would be really wonderful. Advent, doesn't ask us not to be weary or pretend not to be weary, but it invites us to let hope awaken in the midst of our weariness. And so weariness is okay, but I think there's an invitation of hope in there. So, O Holy Night, anybody who's been here more than 1 year will know that that's my favourite Christmas carol. We come to our Christmas Eve service and I say, I don't care what we sing, just as long as it's joyful and as long as we have O Holy Night. Sometimes because we've been struggling to get enough carols, I've sneaked it in twice, at the beginning of the service and at the end, and I don't particularly care. So we'll be doing O Holy Night because it's a great carol, but I've been exploring it a little this week. As to just what it's all about, because we're using this Thrill of Hope line, The Weary World Rejoices. Began in 1847, written, so in one sense it's quite recent in terms of, kind of biblical history. When a guy called Placide Cappeau, this is him always online, they tend to put these two photos together for some reason, and he was just a part-time poet and a part-time Christian in France. He wasn't a great Christian sort of inspiration or anything like that, but the parish priest in Cappeau's hometown asked him to write a Christmas poem to celebrate the renovation of their church organ. Isn't that cute? So the renovation of the church organ, so he writes O Holy Night, in French, of course. The English version comes about 8 years later when a guy called John Sullivan Dwight in 1855, an American minister and an abolitionist, so against the slave trade, was struck in O Holy Night by this line, chains shall he break, for the slave is our brother. And that inspired something. He felt like that was a prophetic word for America, which is incredible, sort of coming out of, a remote part of France. And so the poem was put to song, and slowly, or actually quite quickly, it began to become something of an anthem of what God might do in our weary lives. And so in the lead up to the American Civil War, which started in 1861, so only 6 years later, that became something of a rallying cry. There are great stories around O Holy Night if you do a little bit of research into it. On Christmas Eve 1871, it is said that in the Franco-Prussian War of that time, and you'll recognise this maybe from the First World War Joyeux Noel Silent Night story that we sometimes talk about. It is said that one of the French troops got up out of the trenches and sang O Holy Night. And then on the other side of the trenches, one of the Prussian or German troops got out and sang Christmas Carol in German. And the guns fell silent for a night at least, which is pretty amazing if it happened, but it's a great story, I don't know. Then in 1906, on Christmas Eve again, this is sort of probably more reliable, but a Canadian inventor, Reginald Fessenden, made the world's first AM radio broadcast. And the first broadcast was the violin version of O Holy Night, which went out wireless operators on ships and various stations and outposts around the world. And that was O Holy Night was going out over the airwaves. I love these stories, true or not, whether they're legend or not, because they're born often in weariness. They're born in, not in triumph necessarily, but they're born in the very ordinariness of people's lives, and maybe the disadvantage of people's lives. This political turmoil, this war in those stories, this social division, this technological advances that are going to change the world and make us uncomfortable along the way. But all the time there's this thrill of hope that's breaking into a weary world, a weary world. It was a weary world that Jesus came to as well. So nothing really has changed if we do feel weary or we're among the weary. Isaiah would predict hundreds of years before Jesus came that the people who have walked in darkness have seen a great light. Those who have dwelt in the land of deep darkness, on them has light shone. There was an anxiety and a waiting and a waiting for Jesus to break through that was taking place in those times. Isaiah doesn't deny the darkness. In fact, he names it, this darkness that's happening. But he prophesies a coming light. And we know, and we're going to celebrate this, aren't we, at Christmas time? As it says in Galatians 4:4, in the fullness of time. I guess we translate it just the right time. At the time that God had, just the right time, God sent forth his Son. And we will celebrate that right through to Christmas, obviously, and beyond. If we are walking in darkness, and maybe some, even it's that bleak, if we are walking in darkness, Advent is a season for God to whisper, hold on, the light is closer than we think. That Advent hope is a really important thing. The American writer Madeleine L'Engle wrote that hope is being able to see that there is light despite all the darkness. And so maybe, just maybe, God might want to awaken or reawaken in our lives some hope today and in this season. Paul put it like this, and we've prayed this prayer in a sense over our candle of hope today. May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace in believing, so that by the power of the Holy Spirit you may abound in hope. God is the God of hope. So hope is not optimism, although we're allowed to be optimistic. It's not like, but some people are more optimistic than others, aren't they? Hope is not just positive thinking. I'm gonna shout it in the mirror that I'm not in darkness, and it's going to change somehow along the way. Although there's probably nothing wrong with positive thinking. Hope is not denial. I'm just going to ignore and deny what my feelings deep down are. But hope, some have said, is the realization. I'm going to put the expectation, but at least the realization that God is at work even when we can't see it. So sometimes when we're hopeless or when we're struggling for hope, we can't even quite see that God is actually at work. But hope for us is the realization, or maybe we could almost be expectant that God is at work even when we can't see it. As Paul wrote, may the God of hope fill you. The God of hope. Hope begins not in us, but begins in God, which is amazing. Our role is not to manufacture hope, but to open our hearts to it, to awaken to God's presence, awakening hope, awakening to the possibility of God being in our lives and changing our lives. Awakening, it implies that there's something that's already there, something that's lying dormant, something maybe that needs the breath of the Spirit. Just been reading, is it Ezekiel 37, sort of in our Bible in 1 year, just about a week ago, the breath into the valley of dry bones, sort of bringing new life, like the first rays of dawn awaking us as we sleep, like embers being rekindled, like bones being brought together. There's something of hope in that, not something to be forced, but something allowed to awaken. And I want to invite us towards that this week. Corrie ten Boom, the Dutch lady who was killed by the Nazis in World War II for sheltering Jews, along with her family. Sorry, she wasn't killed. Her sister was killed. She said, "Never be afraid to trust an unknown future to a known God." And I love that. Never be afraid to trust an unknown future. We don't know, the next month, let alone the next year. But never be afraid to trust that unknown to a known God. And He is the God of hope. If we look at the Christmas story, there are themes of hope that come through, and a hope that leads to rejoicing, leads to worship, as it says in our O Holy Night. You'll be familiar with the story from Luke chapter 2, but I'm going to read it from verses 8 to 14. And in the same region, there were shepherds out in the field keeping watch over their flock by night. And an angel of the Lord appeared to them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were filled with great fear. And the angel said to them, "Fear not, for behold, I bring you good news of great joy." There's good news out here of great joy that will be for all of the people. "For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Saviour, who is Christ the Lord. And this will be a sign for you. You'll find a baby wrapped in swaddling cloths and lying in a manger." And suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of the heavenly host praising God and saying, "Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace among those with whom He is pleased." Those shepherds were pretty ordinary and pretty weary, I think, as I understand the life of the shepherd. It wasn't a very glorious job. It was sort of a very, very humble job. It was a very physically demanding job, and you were beaten by the sun and you were drenched by the rain. They were ordinary. They were overlooked. They were weary. And into their weary world comes good news of great joy. There is good news for those who are weary. And they rejoice as a response to the hope that is revealed. Remember that Isaiah 9:2. This is the great light that's shining out of darkness has just arrived into our world. And we get to celebrate that and be with it as we lead up to the Christmas time. We get to be with the thrill of hope. And we get to be a weary world who slowly maybe kind of emerges into this light and have the opportunity to respond to God. And so this Advent, and I know just by the busy nature of our lives that, kind of church is sporadic during December. We can't do this, we've got family, we've got, kind of all of those things are really important. But this Advent, I want to encourage you to be with the themes as we go through them. Maybe to do the readings, maybe to watch it online if you miss it, sort of almost to do it as a spiritual discipline of every Sunday we're going to be doing. So we're hope, and now I know we're peace, and now I know we're joy, and now I know we're love, and to follow through and to sit in it. And we're going to give you the opportunity to be able to experience that a little, or to practice that, I suppose, during our week. And so what I'd love you to do is if you would all stand with me this morning. And we're going to have a wee time of ministry. And that ministry is going to conclude with an invitation for you to come and light your candle from our candle of hope. So I'll do a little bit of admin around that as we come, because we don't want to burn the building down. That would be hopeless. That would be a little discouraging. but to light a candle of hope that together we could hope. So this is what I'd love you to do if you're willing to let me lead you for a few minutes. Is I'd love you to close your eyes and maybe just sort of widen your stance so that you're really comfortable, because you don't want to sort of, be a little unstable. And just in whatever way that you can, make some space for the sense of the presence of God, because hope awakens when we still our heart. And while you're in that place, it might be a good thing to remember God's faithfulness. Because hope can awaken when we remember what God has done. So we thank you for your faithfulness, Lord. And if your world is bleak and dark at the moment, then maybe it's not. You don't have to dredge, you'll just know. Maybe, just maybe, you might look for a small light. And sometimes we look for fireworks or a blazing fire or sunshine. But maybe just a small light of encouragement, a small light of hope. And then finally, to be aware of community around you. We don't do this journey alone. We are a people of hope together. And my hope might be inspirational for you when you have none, and yours for me when I have none, because of the togetherness of what we do. And so this is my wee vision for this moment, is that we come and as the first people arrive with their candles to genuinely light the candle from the candle of hope here, and then just as we sort of fan out and stuff, for others to light their candles from the candles that have been lit from the hope candle, because we don't have the opportunity of just going to one candle. And that we would continue to stand as we just pray a benediction of hope over everybody. So would you like to come?